Let's talk about critical degrees. Hi, I'm Camille, otherwise known as Cosmic Cannibal, and if you heard somewhat of a flushing sound, I didn't just let one rip, it was this chair. I'm your go-to astrologer for making astrology accessible and easy to understand, and today I'm talking about the critical degrees, otherwise known as the anaretic degree, and the 0 degree. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because in 2025, we have not just one, not just two, but 3 outer planets moving into the anaretic 29th degree of the signs they're currently in, and then into the 0 degree of brand new signs. This is not something that we get every single year. And so this is something that I'm really excited to talk about. And I think it's going to be a really fascinating look and take on the astrology of 2025. So yesterday I was kind of watching the news in shock. It was the day of the Pluto Cazimi. A lot of things sort of came about. It seemed like, okay, plutocracy, oligarchy, and then also like chaos. But I didn't feel like the chaos that I was seeing really aligned with the Pluto Cazimi, because it's like, oh, this new administration feels sort of hell-bent on making sweeping, destructive changes that will almost certainly descend the country into more chaos. It's like they're on a mission. And I don't know if you feel it, but there's certainly an overwhelming, inescapable, anxious feeling that even more chaos is on the horizon. I'm not trying to fearmonger at all, but the astrology of 2025 absolutely aligns with this, pointing to loads of additional chaotic changes throughout, not just this year, but the next couple of years. And it's because, as I mentioned, in 2025, we have not one, not two, but 3 outer planets changing signs. Outer planets, the reason this is kind of a big deal is because outer planets are generational planets. They stay in signs for quite a long time. They stay there and they shift and mold cultural movements, political movements, what we make in, our laws and what we put out into the pop culture sphere. So this doesn't just signify major changes for the collective. It also means that we're moving into a period of culmination and reckoning before things start afresh. Now, we hear the word reckoning. I don't want us to go, I don't want us to think it's all going to be bad, because that I have anxiety. So I sometimes, when I look at the astrology and I see anything at the 29th degree, I immediately go, oh crap. But that's because I have anxiety. So I don't want to imprint my anxiety on these astrological movements. Sometimes we have to be a little anxious and a little weary, and we have to be, okay, maybe things are going to look a certain way. But these critical degrees do tell us that this year in particular, 2025, it's definitely a game-changing year. People have called it that. People have called it a banner year. And it's all thanks to those critical degrees. So it's sort of like dominoes falling one by one. Neptune, Saturn, Uranus finally skip out of Pisces and Taurus and move into Aries and Gemini. And this is all throughout the year. And as each planet leaves their sign and enters another, they move into both the 29th degree and then the 0 degree. So those are 2 critical degrees that are often linked to chaotic endings and fresh, but also sometimes chaotic new beginnings or beginnings of new cycles. Let's be proactive about this, right? Again, I'm not trying to fearmonger. I am not trying to make you anxious. I'm anxious enough for the both of us. So if you are feeling that way, if you are feeling a little bit anxious, I want you to know that astrology doesn't do things to us, it does things for us. So you can work with the astrology of 2025. I have 2 awesome resources for you to do this. I have my 2025 astrology chart reading. You can get 10, 20, 30, 60-minute reading with me where I look at your birth chart and I look at what this astrology is activating, what challenges you might encounter, and how you can work with all of that. And then I also have the 2025 rising sign reading. If you don't know your rising sign, you can get one for your sun sign. This is a great broad overview of what 2025 has in store for your sign. So you can work with this astrology. You can navigate it. You don't have to feel like you are at the mercy of it, because you are not. That said, let's move on to the critical degrees. So the 29th degree is a degree of finality, right? It's the last degree of a sign. So when planets move through this degree, there's an overall sense of needing to cross the finish line to get to the other side. But to cross that finish line, you have to reckon with something. You have to wrap something up. There's still something that you need to do. The 29th degree has been a fascinating topic for me because I have a planet in this degree in my chart, and I've always wondered what it means. It brings a lot of internal pressure. So collectively, I think it's going to bring this sense of pressure. Oh, we got to finish this thing. We got to do this thing, because the planet's mission isn't yet complete. There are still unresolved tasks that it needs to deal with. And so those tasks might turn into issues or themes that are still pervasive and unignorable. I've heard that planets at the 29th degree can carry a fair bit of fatigue with them, and that makes sense because the planet has moved through all the other degrees of that sign. So it's oh God, it is trying to cross that finish line. And what do you do when you're almost at the finish line? You don't quit, but you're I don't know how much I have left in me, because the planet has moved through that sign and it's learned nearly all of the lessons except for one or maybe two. So when planets enter the 29th degree, outer planets, they're there for a little bit of time. They're not there. Personal planets move into the 29th degree for a day, and it's all right, fine. But when outer planets move into this degree, it lasts for a couple of weeks, and then it's ooh, sometimes months. If it's Neptune, it's months, right? But they carry this sense of fatigue as well as urgency. So it's as though the planet is cramming before a final exam, it's frantically trying to wrap up its final lessons and experiences before transitioning into the next sign. And that's why there's that pervasive feeling of pressure to resolve issues or even make significant decisions. Now, we saw Pluto move into the anaretic degree of Capricorn in late 2024. Technically, it was in there earlier in the year in January because Pluto moved into Aquarius and then moved out of Aquarius. So that was near the time of the election when Pluto moved into the 29th degree of Capricorn for the last and final time. And there was a lot of fatigue, heavy fatigue, especially in America, right? We were tired of politics. We were tired of government. We were tired of the whole Pluto and Capricorn way of the world, rich people getting richer, life being too costly for everybody else. It's just tired. But with that transit, there was a chance to reckon with reality, to look at our past, to look at our traditions, our, patriarchal proclivities, and change. There was also an opposition that Pluto made to Mars in Cancer. Added to that sort of pressurized fatigue, we felt stretched. We felt like we wanted to go this way, but didn't know if we could let go of the past, right? Even amidst that fatigue, there still were so many Americans that voted to return to the old guard. So the 29th degree, it is an anaretic degree. And the term anaretic is derived from the Greek word anareta, meaning destroyer or bringer of necessity. Let's think about the second, quotable thing there. I don't want to think of these things as just being destructive. In traditional astrology, the anaretic degree was often associated with challenging circumstances. It's it is a critical degree because it brings a little bit of difficulties. It indicates a sense of urgency or crisis that demands resolution. Once you resolve the crisis, you move on. Or in this case, you move into the next sign, right? Hopefully. That's the way that it theoretically would work. The way that life works is that it's really hard to learn the lessons that we need to learn, to do the things that we need to do, to take the actions that we need to take because of X, Y, Z. And so we're still kind of in that crisis point where you're going, ooh. In May of 2024, Neptune moved into the anaretic degree of Pisces, and that marked a really major moment of transition that ultimately, to me, it just led to more sort of collective delusion. Pisces has this tendency to feel really fatigued and overwhelmed, and instead of, mustering the collective courage to face those feelings, to face the trauma and the emotional weight and the heaviness. It's like, I just would rather check out. And so that's what I saw Neptune in the anaretic degree of Pisces doing. On January 11th, the North Node moved into Pisces of this year. That's January 11th, 2025. The North Node moved into Pisces, and the South Node moved into Virgo. Both were at the 29th degree. Now, nodes are points where eclipses happen, so they're a big deal when looking at the overarching storyline, aka themes, of an 18-month period. And with the nodes in the 29th degree of those two signs, we're already seeing checks, balances, and systems somewhat heedlessly discarded, which is the South Node in Virgo. But we're also hurling fast towards chaos, which is the North Node in Pisces. I mentioned how I, was watching the news. A lot of the things that people were saying on the news was like, oh, it's the unknown that's scary. It's the fact that we're not having the same systems in place. It's the fact that all this stuff is sort of up in the air and we don't know when it's going to happen or how severe it's going to be. That's this North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo axis. And it's also the 29th degree of those two signs. It's like we're at this sort of pressurized feeling. Like it feels very much like what's going to happen and how is this going to resolve? The good news is that the nodes move out of the 29th degree on January 25th. The not so good news is that the themes of chaos or chaos versus order and systems versus the unknown will be kind of activated more during the eclipse seasons. But again, it's not going to be at the 29th degree, so let's keep that in mind. Anyway, in contrast to the 29th degree's themes of finality and culmination and reckoning, the 0 degree, which is also a critical degree, is a degree of infinite possibility. So the 0 degree marks the entry into a new zodiac sign. It embodies the purest essence of that sign's energy. It's fresh, untested, and full of possibility. This degree is sometimes called, or I like to kind of think of it as the Aries point, particularly in cardinal signs. And it's because of this degree's association with initiation and action. The struggle of this degree is that in their offering of fresh intentions and innovation and newness and all this stuff and this like bursting forth of energy, planets at 0 degrees also carry a sense of instability and chaos because the energy is just beginning to unfold. I hate these glasses. That's just for whoever's editing this. Even so, both the 0 and the 29th degree hold immense power. We can be constructive with them, or we can be deconstructive. We can be destructive. The choice is always ours. Again, astrology happens around us. It happens for us. I don't think it necessarily happens to us. We always have free will, and we always have a choice in how we work with what is presented to us. Now, what that power is, what endings, lessons, beginnings, and potentialities of the 29th and 0 degrees look like depend on both the planet and the sign. So when planets move through the critical degrees of 0 and 29, they highlight themes of heightened intensity and significant shifts in focus, especially when it moves or when it involves major slow-moving planets like Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. As I mentioned, in 2025, all 3 of these outer planets are shifting out of the 29th degree and into the 0 degree, only to move back into the 29th degree later in the year. So we get this 29th anaretic degree for Neptune, Saturn, and Uranus twice this year. 4 collective goals and ambitions for the collective, for you, for me, for everyone. These transitions tend to coincide with noticeable shifts in cultural priorities, ambitions, societal trends. This is nothing new. This is something that's already unfolding, right? But to put it more simply, when the planets move into these anaretic degrees and then into the critical degree, it's likely when we are going to see the bigger issues of our world kind of come to a head. I don't say that to strike fear. I don't say that so that you go, oh my God, I have to buy my survival blanket and I got to get my end of the world biscuits and gravy. Like, I mean, if you're into that, sure. But I say that because it's like that's just what we can expect. So we have these things happening in March, in May, in July, and then we're seeing them in September, in October, in November. We just want to be prepared, right? We want to know this ahead of time so that we're not feeling like everything is falling into chaos and we don't know what's happening and we don't know where it's going and we don't know how it's going to end. We do know how it's going to end. We do know that things always reach a conclusion. They feel really intense and they feel really restless and chaotic in the moment. But once we, calm our nervous system and we realize, okay, we are adults and we're able to handle these situations, it doesn't seem so scary, right? I have the full scope of these anaretic and critical degree transits of 2025 on my Substack, cosmiccannibal.substack.com. Paid subscribers get access to a slew of horoscope articles like this one. And again, if you want to work with this astrology and you want to understand how it's landing for you, if you have placements in a mutable sign or cardinal sign, 29 degrees, 0 degrees, these are going to impact you in 2025. And I highly, highly recommend my 2025 astrology birth chart reading and my 2025 rising sign reading. You can get one for your sun sign. If you don't already, be sure to follow me on social media at Cosmic Cannibal Camille. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, follow, subscribe. Happy 2025 and goodbye for now.